Welcome back to the Something in the Wilderness podcast, where we deep dive into one Andrew McMahon song at a time, and sometimes we get to explore other avenues through these song discussions. So today we have the author of a brand new book. This fictional novel has a particular connection to Andrew's music, which we'll get into. Welcome to the show, Hazel.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so glad you're here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got into Andrew's music originally?
I live in California in the Bay Area. I'm a mom and a wife, and I guess you could call me a hobby writer on my nights and weekends. That's kind of how I spend my free time. About a year ago, I got serious about wanting to write a book. It's kind of a thought that I've had in my head for about 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of done that, and there's a lot of musical themes within it.
Awesome. And how did you first come about Andrew's music that eventually made its way into your book? But how did you first come about his music
Sure.
as a fan?
Yeah, so I first got into his music in the fall of 2003. I was a freshman in college, was meeting my roommates, and it was introduced to me by my roommates. I know for sure it was Leaving Through the Window, Punk Rock Princess, and that was kind of the
Mm-hmm.
song that started it. And from there we were all hooked. Andrew's music, Something Corporate, was sort of what really opened the door to the whole pop punk emo scene for me, which I found that I really love that music and still like resonates with me 20 years later.
Yeah, I've recently been getting into bands from that era that somehow I missed. So I was a big Something Corporate fan as well, but I've just recently kind of been checking out bands like The Starting Line and Midtown in the early November, bands that for some reason I never ever listened to 20 years ago, but it's all kind of bubbling up now, and I'm like, wow, I missed all this stuff, and kind of going, and it's reminding me of that Something Corporate era.
I do the same thing on Spotify. It starts, after a while, it starts to track what you listen to, and then it
Yes.
gives you suggestions you might like, or they curate these playlists for you. And I've found the same way a lot of bands that I actually didn't know, and I've been listening to them, for the last couple of years, going, oh, how did I miss this? But like the whole music scene has really changed, and the availability of music. We're not scouring the internet anymore for songs that we didn't have on CD and things like that.
Yeah, I see that whole thing as a blessing and a curse because on one hand, you can check out anything you've ever wanted to. And anytime you hear something mentioned by somebody somewhere, or someone directly tells you about something, you can access that. But on the other hand, it's like too much. Like I can't possibly listen to everything, and I want to. So that's kind of where that's the curse. It's like, oh my gosh, now I got to pick
Right.
out of these things.
Right.
So, and I feel like I miss newer things because of that too, because I'm just trying to keep up with everything.
Oh yeah, no, I'm so not hip with the new music these days. I went to a wedding recently, and this song came on and everybody was dancing and singing, and I was like, "Oh gosh, I don't know this song." They were like, "What? They played on the radio." And I'm like, "I don't listen to the radio."
Yeah, I'm the same. Like Spotify suggestions are my radio, so
Yeah.
it's basically keeping me in that same algorithm. I'm hearing the same type of stuff, whether it be new type of stuff or what. But
Yeah.
can you give us a brief synopsis of what your book is about, though?
Yeah, the book it's would be considered, a romance novel. It's a love story. It's actually set in the year 2004. I think I must emotionally have this connection to the past that like
Mm-hmm.
I needed to write about it. And so it's about a summer where this girl who's just graduated high school, she's 18, she goes on vacation to Fire Island, New York, and she meets a guy who's a local. He's 23, and it's kind of just their story of falling in love. He's a musician. He plays the piano and the guitar. He
Mm-hmm.
writes music. She loves the pop punk music, and they kind of fall in love with each other through their love of music. And it's turned into actually two books. As I was writing, there was just so much that I wanted to capture in this first summer that they met, that it ended up becoming long enough to be its own. So it's actually considered a duet now. And so the conclusion of the book will come or the conclusion of the story will come in the second book that will be getting released a couple months after this book. And then eventually, kind of in my head, as I started writing more, I wanted to put this all into a series. And there's additional characters in the books that now hopefully will get their own book at some point.
Oh, okay. Like spin-offs. Okay.
I'm hoping to keep the musical theme throughout. I tried really hard to any of the musical references or the playlist that's part of this book had to come from songs that were available in the year 2004. So it's
Oh, yeah.
very early 2000s music. There's a lot of songs from the later 2000s, 2007, 8, 10 that I really wanted to use, but it just didn't fit with the time. I didn't feel it was appropriate to include it. So, yeah, and actually in the book, the two main characters go to a something corporate and a Newfound Glory concert. And so there's a whole scene at the concert, which is kind of
Okay.
fun to write. And, just
Yeah.
from some of my experiences with music and well, not like music. I don't play music by I'm not musical at all.
As a music fan,
As a
though, right?
music fan, yes, exactly.
I get it. And that was going to be one of my questions for you is, so this is probably not biographical necessarily, but so some of it's based on experiences you've had and you were able to incorporate maybe something that's happened to you or you've done in life that you can incorporate into the
Yeah, little
characters.
bits and pieces. So people have kind of asked me, have you, did you write about anybody you know? And my feeling is I think I've taken little pieces of people, experiences, and created situations, and I've created people. So not one character is not any one person that I know. It's maybe a
Hmm.
mixture of people, but definitely, pulling from that young love, angsty feeling of, just
Hmm.
like trying to figure things out when you're younger and what is love and so no one in particular and no one scenario, but pulled little bits and pieces.
Well, I see some parallels between maybe some elements of the plot or the characters and Andrew McMahon and his catalog, because one thing I know is that, for example, the song Constantine, when people have asked him, he said, no, that's not about any one person. That's about several different people I had in my life, and I kind of weaved a story
Mm.
around using those different characters per se in the song. So I think that's pretty neat that so you kind of did the same thing.
That's a really cool metaphor to kind of pull. I like that.
Yeah, and Andrew's music is, I mean, his whole catalog just about is a love story. So, I mean, a lot of it anyway. So before we talked, I ended up looking. By the way, the book is called Saltaire. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yes, you are.
Okay, so Saltaire, and I looked it up because I wanted to know what it meant, and I didn't realize it was an actual place.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned Fire Island, and that's what I learned in my little bit of research, but I didn't realize this was an actual place. I assumed it would be a fictional place.
Right. So yeah, Saltaire is a real little teeny tiny town on Fire Island, which is off the coast of Long Island.
Hmm.
And it's a really unique place because cars are not allowed on the island. It's very, very small. Only, a couple hundred people live there year round. But in the summertime, lots of people go to vacation there. They have summer houses out there. And it's fun because you can only get around by walking or riding a bicycle or taking a water taxi. And so you have to take a ferry to get to the island.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't think quirky is the right word because it is very East Coast beachy, but it's very laid back. It's a very like relaxing, fun place to go.
See, that's a world I know nothing about because I think of New York and Long Island and I think of city. I don't think of beaches. That's really hard to imagine, but that's kind of interesting to paint that picture for me of the different types of places, not being from around there, not spending much time in New York City or the surrounding areas for much of my life. I wouldn't know that, so it's kind of neat to hear that perspective.
So I've only been to Fire Island two times in my life, but it's
Must
just
have made an impression.
it stuck with me and really did make an impression.
The song we chose for today was Restless Dream by Jack's Mannequin. And I'm wondering, what made you decide to include this particular song into, because I know we'll get into more of it throughout the episode, but like from a general sense, what made you use this particular song as one of the reference points in your book?
I think while I was trying to make this playlist to accompany the book, it's a little mix of like these true love declaration songs, some heartbreak, some angry screaming music,
Hmm.
and this Restless Dream song actually doesn't come until the second book now. Originally I had, included it as part of the book, and now that it's been separated into two, it actually will come in the second book.
Oh, right. I didn't even put that together. So we're in 2004. That's right. Okay. So it would be later on in the story.
Yeah. So later on, right, because Jack's Mannequin wasn't around in 2004. So
Right.
a little bit of time will have passed for the second book. And this is just a song that really fit because to me, it's a very sad song.
Hmm.
I really love how it's stripped down and it's just the guitar and Andrew. And it's also kind of a confusing song, I think. Like, if I really try to understand what each of the lyrics means, I'm sometimes still like confused.
Oh, I'm looking forward to talking through those lyrics with you.
All right.
All right. So this was track 10 on People and Things, as you mentioned. So 2011, October 4th, 2011 is when it came out, which interestingly is almost 11 years to the day that we're recording this, almost exactly.
Wow.
I thought that was pretty neat. Do you remember when you first heard this song or the impact it first had on you?
Yeah, so this actual song, I truly don't remember when I first heard it, but as I was mentioned earlier, as I was going through trying to create this playlist, I specifically knew I wanted a Jack's Mannequin song. And so I would, just was listening to that entire catalog, trying to find a song that fit the moment and expressed the feelings.
Hmm.
And I think though it's really like the guitar intro that pulls me in at first. It's soft and it seems sad. And to me, I don't know, it just like creates this sadness in me. And that's what I wanted. And it just kind of fit. But the very first time I heard it, I don't truly remember.
And that's okay. I don't either. I rarely ever remember the first time I heard a song. I mean, it has happened, but it's a rare thing for me to remember that exact moment. I remember listening to the album for the first time all the way through, and I'm sure that's when I heard it, but I don't remember that one standing out to me.
Hmm.
I've mentioned before on the show that most of the People and Things album is listed as being produced by Jim Scott, Rob Cavallo, and Andrew McMahon. So interestingly, this is the only track on the album that specifically says Rob Cavallo was not a producer on the song. It was only produced by Andrew and Jim Scott. Jim Scott's not to be confused with Jim Wirt, who produced most of the Something Corporate and Jack's Mannequin prior material. This song was recorded at Players Recording Studio, which is Jim Scott's studio just north of Hollywood. And interestingly, on the track, Andrew sings, but he doesn't play the piano, which I want to talk more about, but this is a very rare instance where he recorded a song but didn't actually play piano or keyboard, which as a songwriter who that's your primary instrument, I just found that pretty fascinating. I could not come up with any other songs in his entire catalog, and I'm sure they exist, but I just, off the top of my head, without like listening to every song, again, of course, I couldn't think of any where he doesn't play piano on besides this one.
That's funny because I was actually thinking the same thing, and I was hoping you were going to have that information because
Okay.
I was trying to think the same thing. Like it's very different for him because there is no piano.
I do actually have one, but it wasn't an official release. It was a demo. So have you ever heard the song Wait by Something Corporate?
I do like that song. Yeah.
I love that song. It's up there. It's top tier Andrew for me. Although it wasn't written by Andrew, ironically. They did an acoustic guitar version of it originally back in like 2001, and you can find it on YouTube but then they re-recorded it with the full band in 2010 for the Best of album.
I actually think I vaguely remember, I mean, I must have found this recording somewhere on the internet a long time ago because I remember having a burned CD and it was a very fuzzy recording. It wasn't that clear and it almost seemed like it was live.
It definitely sounds like a demo.
Okay, it's maybe that's what it is. It was a demo, and it does sound different than the actual album recording
You mean from back then, or you're comparing it to the 2010 version?
to the 2010 version.
I agree. The only other instruments I know of on Restless Dream, though, are they sound like a stringed instrument. I would have said violin at points. I don't know if you hear that, but it's not something that's really at the forefront. You really hear that acoustic guitar. But in the liner notes, it lists Bobby Anderson as playing guitar, Patrick Warren playing keyboards, which when we get to the sound, I'll kind of talk about where I think I hear that, but I'm not real good at picking out instruments, I'll warn you.
Oh, me, the other.
But I hear strings at points, and that's not listed in the liner notes. What is listed in the liner notes is that it says Patrick Warren did the arranging on the track. And when I think arranging, I've always thought of strings, of, an arrangement of strings. And that's not necessarily what that means, apparently. I went ahead and looked it up. I Googled it, and I found that the definition on Britannica.com for arrangement is in music, traditionally any adaptation of a composition to fit a medium other than that for which it was originally written, while at the same time retaining the general character of the original. In lighter terms, basically something that was written with one instrument and then kind of converted to a different one. So I find it completely fitting for this song because I got to imagine Andrew wrote it on a piano, right?
You sent the music video from the Guitar Center.
Mm-hmm.
That's the song just on the piano, and it actually sounds completely different, I think.
Yeah, I feel like that may have been its original form. And
Hmm.
so it's super interesting to me to think why writing a song on a piano, then you'd take it and say, let's do this on an acoustic guitar. Or I don't know if that was Bobby the guitarist's idea or Patrick the arrangement guy's idea or the producer's idea. I don't know who, or maybe it was Andrew. Maybe he was like, I want to do something different. There's things you find by looking in the liner notes and kind of doing some digging that I know most people don't do, but I'm kind of a nerd about. Like some people really nerd out about sports stats. They follow their team and they know the numbers. That's not me. I nerd out about like this kind of stuff, like digging deep into like, well, why did they make that decision? Who's on that song? And what is that other thing I hear in there that I can't identify? So that's kind of the stuff I nerd out about, just a little bit insight into who I am. But yeah, I assume he wrote it on a piano and then they arranged it for an acoustic guitar track, but I really don't know that for sure. But yeah, we do eventually get to hear it as a piano song, as you pointed out, and that's a really awesome version, by the way. But I also want to point out one other thing about the production. Have you ever heard of a singer named Brandy Carlisle?
I'm so bad with names,
And that's
not off
perfectly
the top
okay.
of my head.
She's completely outside the scene we've been talking about up to this point. So she's considered a modern country, alternative country, folk, Americana. I've seen her have all those labels. Which one fits, I couldn't really say because it's not really my genres, but she writes decent songs. I never knew any of her music until like 2 days ago. I decided to just listen to a couple albums like in the background, and I was like, yeah, I could see the appeal here. Like it's good. But the reason I bring her up right here is that she is listed as backing vocals on this track. Have you ever noticed female vocals on the track?
No, I was just trying to think.
I didn't either.
I'm
And I feel
not.
like I've listened to this song a lot. There's actually during the chorus, there's a woman singing certain lines. She sings them at the same time and in a very similar way to how Andrew sings it. So it's hard to notice unless basically like put some headphones on and you can kind of pick it out at times. I think we would notice it if it wasn't there, but it's really hard to notice if you're looking for it, if that makes sense.
Interesting. I will have to go back and listen because I'll admit today I spent some time listening to the song,
Yeah.
just trying to prepare for meeting with you. And I no, I've not heard a female in the background.
Yeah. Well, put some headphones on and if you think of it during the chorus, I think you
Okay.
will notice. But Brandy Carlisle has been around making music for like over 15 years. And I found out through this dive into her catalog that she's won 6 Grammys, has been nominated 18 times, and that's just in the last 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So talk about not being current with music. Like that's me. Like apparently I know nothing
Yeah.
about modern music because she is this all-star songwriter. She's written with a lot of other people, famous musicians, but she has her own stuff that's done really well too. So I'm assuming that, but maybe she wasn't that well known back then. And she was just kind of, a musician, a songwriter. And they were like, hey, let's bring someone new Brandy. And they're like, let's bring in Brandy. And, nowadays, if she were on one of Andrew's track or anybody's track, I'm sure she'd be very like noticeable because she's famous now.
Right.
Maybe she wasn't famous 11 years ago. I don't know.
Yeah, I have no clue. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Have you ever seen Andrew live? Like, or specifically, did you get a chance to see something corporate and Jack's Mannequin live? I want to ask.
So yeah, I saw something corporate back in I went back through my head and figured everything out. So yeah, I did see something corporate back in March of 2004
Oh,
with my roommates. We
the North era.
yeah, so it was North and they played a lot of Leaving Through the Window as
I
well.
bet.
I went to Setlist FM and was kind of going back through what tracks they played and yeah, that show was awesome. They played with Yellow Card
Oh my gosh, that would have been amazing.
at that. And actually the starting line was opener for that show.
What a lineup.
I think they were. So that was fun. Unfortunately, I never got to see Jack's Mannequin live. Just didn't happen. And then I saw Andrew in October of 2021 with the Three Pianos tour.
Oh, you did see that tour.
Yeah,
Very cool.
I really liked that show because it was very compilation of, his entire catalog. And I know it kind of went with his memoir. At the time, I hadn't read the memoir. I did read
Hmm.
it a month or two after I saw him, but I just like that he openly shares so much about his family and his wife and his daughter. And it was very intimate. It was not a huge show. It was very laid back, which kind of different. I then actually just saw him this past September for the Hello Gone Days tour with
Yeah.
Dashboard Professional. And that was fun. And it might have been because like general admission, we were standing there able to dance and jump around. And he's an amazing performer. I love his vibe when he's on stage. And
I didn't get to a show for the Three Pianos tour specifically, but I did see him live during that tour, oddly enough, on the Rock Boat. I went on the Rock Boat, and the reason I bring it up is because on the second time they performed on the Rock Boat, they played something that was pretty much just like the Three Pianos set. Mostly just the three of them, Andrew, Mikey, and Morgan, and they played through most of the same songs that you would have seen in the Three Pianos tour. But for some reason, I don't know if it was by request or what, Bobby came out during that because he was on the boat with them for the other performances, and they played Restless Dream.
he did.
Yeah, which it's one of those songs I never expected to see, but honestly, I'm always kind of looking for those nuggets of songs that either I never expect to see or haven't seen live yet. And so it was so exciting to me. And I rarely ever take video of a full song in concert. I always waver with, oh my gosh, I want to capture this, but I also just want to live in the moment. So it's like a struggle for me, but I did record that and I was thinking, I don't know if I'm ever going to get a chance to see this again, and I want to relive it again. So I was like, I did one of these, like I held it down here and I watched not through my camera lens because I really wanted to experience, but it's hard to experience it fully at the same time you're holding a phone. But I tried, and I was glad I did though because I look back on that video really fondly. I'll link it in the show notes for everybody, but it's Andrew for most of that performance. He's sitting on the edge of the stage. There's no security. There's no barrier. There's just people standing around. And Bobby's back there playing the guitar. And Morgan's just sitting like watching. And it looks like she's genuinely enjoying watching the performance from on the stage. And it just felt very intimate. I feel like I was witnessing a pretty special moment. In some songs this happens in concert. In others it does not. It rarely goes the opposite way, but that made that song so much more special to me, seeing it in that atmosphere because everybody was just so respectful and quiet, and it's such a quiet song. So it's just
Mhm.
Bobby on guitar and Andrew singing his vocals, nothing else. It was pretty amazing. So according to Setlist FM, Andrew's only played Restless Dream 90 times in concert ever, which I guess is quite a bit for like a slow acoustic song.
Mhm.
I would say half of that was during the Jacks Mannequin era, and the other half was in the modern era of Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness. I don't know if I'll ever see that song live again, and I think I'm okay with that because I felt like that was the moment. All right, so let's talk about the songwriting a little bit. So I learned a little bit about the songwriting on the People and Things album. That is the era where Andrew started to do some co-writing with other songwriters. But this song was solely written by Andrew, is my understanding. And he stated in an interview with Entertainment Tonight, and I'll link this little video, the short video, in the show notes, that it is, if not his very favorite song off of People and Things, it's one of his favorite songs off People and Things.
Hmm.
Again, who knew an acoustic guitar ballad is a pianist songwriter's favorite song on his album?
Who knew?
If you have Spotify, there's a collection of tracks called Introducing People and Things under Jack's Mannequin, and you can listen to his story about how he wrote this song, but I'll just summarize it here in a nutshell. There was some filmmakers who contacted him about writing a song for their movie, and they were making a movie about a 10-year high school reunion. And they said, we need a song for, whatever description they gave him, I don't know. And so he went to sleep that night. He didn't have any ideas. And he woke up, the way he put it, to his dog standing on his eye. And he was like, okay, I guess it's time to get up and write this song now. So he gets up, and I don't think he specified whether it was on a piano, but I assume it was. And he gets up, and he said he kind of pounded it out in like an hour. Like he said, it was one of those that just naturally came to him. And in fact, he was so inspired, and he loved it so much that apparently he got the guys together, and they went to the studio that day and recorded it.
Wow.
So it almost feels really unplanned, and I feel like the track kind of sounds that way too. Like it's just a couple people in a studio like making some music together, and I really appreciate that about it. But because I'm so curious, I had to know which movie this was for. It did not make it in the movie. So in that track on Spotify, if and when you ever listen to it, he says, yeah, I don't know if they're going to use it or not. But he said, we put a little note when we sent it over, and we said, I don't know if you're going to use this in your movie or not, but we're definitely putting it on the album because we love it. And good decision. So they did not use it in the movie, but I looked it up, and I found a movie. I'm pretty confident it's a movie called 10 Years, which makes sense, 10-year high school reunion. And it stars Channing Tatum, Chris Pratt, Aubrey Plaza, and Oscar Isaac of Moon Knight and Star Wars fame.
Okay.
So I don't know if you're familiar with those shows or movies, but the reason I bring up Oscar Isaac specifically is because he apparently sings a song, a Bob Dylan song, during the movie. And I listened to it, and I can't remember exactly what it was called. Oh, it's called I Ain't Going Nowhere. And I'm pretty sure, I've narrowed it down, I'm pretty sure that's the song they went with instead of Restless Dream.
Oh, wow.
Basically, this actor covers a Bob Dylan song because it is kind of somber, reflective, but it's more upbeat. So I don't know if that's why they went ahead with something more upbeat, or because, hey, we get to use a Bob Dylan song, and I think Andrew would probably be understanding to that. But I just thought that was a really neat kind of rabbit hole I went down. I was like, okay, I got to figure out what movie this was. Of course, I'll never know why they didn't use it, but it's just a small indie flick. It's not on any of my streaming services, but probably will not pay to rent it or anything like that. At least I know what it is now, I think.
You're such a good like internet sleuth. You go and find out all these little specific details. I enjoy listening to that in each of your episodes.
Oh, thanks. This podcast has made me better at that. It's funny. My wife has helped me in the past just with general things, maybe not about the podcast, but when I need to find something online, she has this, like, she's much more of a sleuth than I am. She's like, why don't you just Google it this way? Like, bam, 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 and I'm just like, why didn't I think of that? So I've gotten a little bit better, and I think she'd agree. So let's talk a little bit about what the song sounds like, and we've already touched on this a bit, but I want to read a quote from Wikipedia. It was originally from an article, but then it was incorporated into the Wikipedia article. I read this, and it's about the People and Things album in general, but I think it's really especially applicable to this song. And it reads, compared to the band's past works, the piano was not at the forefront of the songs, something McMahon approached from a production viewpoint rather than a self-serving one. He wanted an organic feeling that worked for each track, which meant viewing songs from other instruments' perspectives. The album songs were focused around the vocals, and instrumental arrangements were focused around the lyrics. When you think of this song, have you ever thought of it as something different from the rest of the Jacks Mannequin collection because it doesn't have piano, or is that even something that came to mind?
No, yeah, it does. And I think without the piano and just the guitar, I mean, well, I don't know, we talked a little bit earlier about how there might be other instruments
Other
that
things going on?
we can't really hear. It just seems very stripped down and simplistic. And to me, it feels quite different than most of his other stuff.
Yeah.
In instances where he has like a ballad of some sort, it's with the piano, not with the guitar, off the top of my head that I
Yeah.
can think of.
Reading this quote here from the article, whoever wrote it is saying he was looking to look at the other instruments' perspectives or take it from another instrument's perspectives. And I guess that's what he's doing here. I never would have thought he would take that angle, but if I have to think a little deeper about it, maybe that's what he's done in his more recent albums, because I don't know if you've listened to his more recent stuff. Some of it's very like electronic, and there's a lot going on. Sounds I can't identify myself. Maybe it's not piano and keyboards as much as I don't know, something else. And maybe he's kind of thinking about a little bit of a bigger picture and what things could sound like from this other angle. I don't know.
His music has really progressed and changed over the 20 years of what he started with in something corporate, and then the Jacks Mannequin to Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness. I personally love that he makes everything work. Like there isn't a song that he does where I think, oh, that's not that great. He makes it work, and I appreciate that it can be so vastly different and still be uniquely him.
Yeah, that's for sure. Uniquely him and uniquely Andrew. I like that. But interestingly, before I even knew that about the whole movie tangent I went on earlier, I always thought this sounded like the end of a movie to me, which I guess kind of fits for what he wrote it for. Like it sounds like the end of a movie. It also sounds like the end of an album to me. I thought this was the last track on People and Things for most of its existence. And it's not to dismiss the actual last track of the album, because that feels like a good closer too. That's Casting Lines. But I don't know. Whenever I thought of this song, I thought, oh yeah, it's the end of People and Things. It just sounds like a natural end. I don't know. Do you think this was the right closer, or do you think? I mean, does it feel like an album closer to you? I guess is a better question.
Yeah, actually, funny thing is, when I was trying to pick what song to use, it was between Restless Dream and Casting Lines. And I really
Oh.
came down to the lyrics and what they meant for that specific moment. But then the other part is a long time ago, when we'd get our CDs, we'd open it up and we'd put it in. And the very first song I would always listen to was the last song, because to me it was always the most important song. I don't know. There's something about the last song on an album that always moved me. And that was almost always my favorite song on any album was the last song. And if I didn't like the last song, I almost wouldn't listen to the album. It was like that was my make it or break it.
Wow, that's a lot of pressure on one song.
It is. And I'm like, and so actually I could definitely see Restless Dream as being a closer, just wrapping everything up and sort of, I don't know, when we talk about the piano version, I think even hearing it that way, it moves me in this strange way.
So I can assume that if Restless Dream had been the last track, that would have been that album would have been a keeper for you.
Well, I like Casting Lines very much as well, so the
Okay.
album can stay.
Yeah. I don't know. I also heard this in this album, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before. I heard this album as the 11 tracks plus I think the 4 bonus tracks as well. So I wouldn't have known for probably all that time where the album ended and where the bonus tracks began. So there were 3 bonus tracks you got for buying it on iTunes, which is how I got music at the time. Maybe I don't know if Broken Bird came with it too, or I got that somewhere else, but maybe I bought that separately. But those were all in the end, those 3 bonus tracks for People and Things, and then Brooke. So I don't know, and they all kind of have like this like lighter ballady type of sound to it, and so I didn't know which I think I just thought Restless Dream was the end, And then Casting Lines was the beginning of the bonus tracks. I think that's what it was.
Ah, interesting.
But now that I have the actual CD, which I do still listen to CDs on occasion, believe it or not, and that's the way it's presented on Spotify, of course, with Casting Lines at the end, I can think of it as that is the end of this album, that is. So, without spoilers, of course, if there was a movie made of Saltaire, could you imagine Restless Dream at the end of it?
It wouldn't be at the end. I would hope it was somewhere in the middle.
Okay. I mean, it is. You said it's kind of somber, but it's kind of romantic too, though. I mean, it's. Well, we'll get it. We'll get into it when we get into lyrics. But yeah, go ahead. I'm
Right.
sorry.
Yeah. So I mean, the two books. The first one, kind of leaves you at a cliffhanger, and it just to be the song is really sad. So I wouldn't want this to be the
I
closing
gotcha.
of the movie.
Yeah, if you listen to the lyrics, I suppose it does sound like it's ending on a sour note. Yeah. So I mentioned Brandy Carlisle earlier, and I'm just going to touch back to her for a moment here. Something I noticed. So after I listened to some Brandy Carlisle, which was I didn't spend a whole lot of time with it, but just a little bit, I noticed that this song kind of fits her style, coincidentally. Did you notice in the song? I'm gonna try to make the sound of the guitar, and I'm awful at this, but it's like a bum 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 right before the chorus, and then he sings "Oh my imagination." It goes bum 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 bum. It reminds me of like an old timey country riff. If you just cut that piece out, and not to say again that Brandy Carlisle is completely country, but she kind of incorporates some of that same sound, that acoustic, leaning country, but more rock type, like alternative rock. So I just thought that was kind of cool that it kind of fits within her wheelhouse. So I don't know how that all fit with bringing Brandy Carlisle onto the track or not. I do feel like in another world, if Andrew had not ever recorded that song and he was like, but hey, do you want it, Brandy? Newer songwriter, and she recorded it. I feel like that song could have fit onto one of her albums, at least some of them, because I listened to 2 albums of hers. Yeah, I just thought I'd point that out. So, lastly, on the sound of the song, are you a Dashboard Confessional fan?
I am. Yeah.
Okay, so on the Hello Gone Days tour, was that as exciting for you as maybe it was for me, like having 2 bands that I enjoy that I got to see at one time?
Yeah, it was almost like a 2 for 1. I loved
Yeah,
both headlined and they were both full shows. You got to get a full set. It wasn't just like one of them was opening, and so that was great.
so I read somewhere on the internet someone compared this. Maybe it was a YouTube comment. I don't even know. And somebody compared this to a Dashboard Confessional song, this Restless Dream.
Huh.
Could you see that, or
I guess I could kind of see that.
yeah?
Dashboard has always been a little more that like acoustic, slower,
Mm-hmm.
bleed my heart out. I mean, Andrew does a lot of that, but I think Dashboard is like just that gut-wrenching, broken heart
Right.
kind of song. So I could see this being a Dashboard song.
I could definitely see it too. I just thought I'd bring that up because they just toured together. So it was kind of because that comment, it was a YouTube comment, I remember now. It was like a 5 or 10 year old comment, which I found interesting. Like there was no
Oh,
way he could have known that, hey, they're eventually going to tour together.
that's interesting. Huh. I like that.
It sounds like there was something in the lyrics that inspired you to use this in your book, that pushed you to use this one over Casting Lines. Is that right?
Hmm.
Can you maybe talk about one or some of the lyrics that kind of jumped out at you in terms of like, okay, this is fitting for my story?
There's definitely two that stand out the most that
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of repeat. The first one is, guess I've missed you since the day that we first met.
Very, very emo, but I
Very.
love it. Very romantic too. It's a very romantic line.
Yes,
As soon as I met you, I missed you.
I missed you.
That's amazing.
It's like this overwhelming feeling when you first meet someone, this person that you just love so much, and it's like I was saying earlier, sometimes I don't even know how to explain what the lyrics mean to me. They just
Mm-hmm.
like it's just this feeling
Mm-hmm.
that I get inside. Yeah, so that's one of them. To me, it's also kind of, I've missed you since the day that we first met. Maybe thinking that you've let them go and you're not sure whose fault it was. You're hurting, and maybe it was like this inevitable thing that was just bound to happen. That's kind of my feeling that I get when I hear
Mm-hmm.
that line. And then the other part from the song, it's funny how the words we never say can turn into the only thoughts we know. It's just like, regret. That's how I see that. The things
Mm-hmm.
we keep inside, the things we didn't say or we didn't do, or maybe the things we did do, that tears you up, eats away at you, and it's all you can think about, like all consuming. When you're like first learning how to love someone or having feelings towards someone,
Mm-hmm.
there's things maybe you're scared to say, and then you just dwell on it, and it's
Yeah.
constantly eating at you.
I love how you put that when you're learning how to love someone. That lyric is the last one you mentioned is my very favorite lyric of the song. It's funny how the words we never say can turn into the only thoughts we know. That one stands out to me every single time I hear the song. If I remembered, and I don't, probably from the first time I heard it. And that one, and I rarely remember moments in concerts. I remember when he sang those words when I saw this in concert, and I was like, oh my gosh. And it could mean something different to everybody, but yeah, I think it makes us think about the words we don't get to say. The verses are excellent. I mean, like you could say this about a lot of Andrew songs, and we talked about Dashboard earlier, and in music in general. I mean, but it's like a poem. The verses are like, if you just take these verses, and the chorus is great too. Don't get me wrong. It's just a little bit of a standout from the story in the choruses. But I see themes in these verses though. What do you think? So the first verse, I'm going to go ahead, if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and read through it,
Yeah.
if that's cool with you. He sings, I wonder how you've been and where you are, a letter to the one who slipped away, a letter for the things that never start. And I feel like that's the longing chapter. And then the second verse, it's funny how the words we never say can turn into the only thoughts we know, but Austin's just so very far away, and I cannot believe I let you go. So to me, that's the regret chapter, the regret verse. And then third, and it's kind of coming back down to bring you back. And so I write to this address that I don't know. They said you had to leave and we lost track. So if you hear this on the radio, I've said it now and there's no turning back. So he's accepting the fact that this is over, this is in the past. I'm going to have to be okay with it. So I hear longing and regret and then acceptance, like these phases, if you will, in getting over a relationship. And I don't know, it kind of struck me as I was going through, I was reading these aloud to myself. It's like he was writing a poem or a story. And I know that he mentioned in the interview that I listened to, the Entertainment Tonight one. He says it's okay to like look back on a past relationship fondly. It's not like you want to be back in that old relationship. If you're looking at a past one and you're in a current one, but it's okay to say those were good memories. Those can stay in the past.
I like that the longing, regret, and acceptance that
Mm-hmm.
each of the different pieces. I didn't see that, but now I do. And I, like you said, Andrew's music is very poetic.
Mm-hmm.
He always just tells this moving story with his words. Longing, regret, and acceptance.
Yeah, and then you have the chorus, which, hey, it's a great chorus. Oh, my imagination's running wild. We've talked about this line. Guess I've missed you from the day that we first met. Crazy, this fascination makes a sound like a twister in my mind. The restless dream we left behind, I never will forget this restless dream. And I think the chorus stays the same all three times that he says that piece. So, which is sometimes he changes it up in some of his songs, but pretty sure that one stays the same. So, do you have a favorite part of the song, whether it be lyrics or otherwise, like something that really either it may be something you've already mentioned or
Well, I think it's your favorite line as well. Just
yeah.
the funny how the words we never say can turn into the only thoughts we know. I feel like if you were to get a tattoo, that would be a really good reminder to, I think also to speak how you're feeling if you care for someone.
Mm-hmm.
Don't keep the things inside.
Definitely. Did you have a chance to watch the short film?
I did.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you first what you thought of it.
Okay, so I'd never seen it before until
Mm-hmm.
I just watched it.
Neither had I.
And I was very confused as to what it meant. And it almost was trying to understand it maybe from Andrew's perspective. Like maybe he wrote the song differently than I've expected or how I've felt it. Right. Just like there's the guy, he's by himself, but he seemed to have what he needed. Like he looked like he had food, he had shelter, he had clothing, and I wasn't sure why he was there or what he was doing.
Hmm.
Was he there because he wanted to be? Was he working? Was he trying to be found? And then the picture at the end when he wraps it up and puts it in the flare gun and shoots it off.
I didn't even realize he did that. I remember him looking at the picture. I didn't know that he shot it.
He wraps it around one of the flares and then he puts it in the gun, and at the very end he shoots it.
Oh, well, that's really odd.
And so I'm like, is he like letting her go? Is
That's what I would say.
But I don't know. It was very interesting as I was watching it and trying to like decipher what does this mean. So I don't know. What did you feel?
I can tell you that there was a short film for each of the tracks, the 11 tracks on People and Things. So there's like a different
Oh,
short film.
I did not know that.
But they're all different. I mean, they're pretty much all unrelated. I haven't watched every single one yet. This is the first time I've seen this one. I watched it twice, but this past week was the first time. And some of them are completely unrelated to the subject of the song. I found this one to be somewhat related in the way that it was a man seemingly longing for someone he missed. But it was odd that it took place in, to me, what looked like a post-apocalyptic world where, like you said, he was living in a shelter and he had the things he seemed to maybe need. I thought he was calling for help. But what you just said about the picture changes my mind a little bit on that. So I thought he was calling for help by shooting off a flare, like he hopes that she'll see him and find her way to him. But then the fact that he shot the picture out of the flare, I don't know what that means. Like you said, probably, okay, I'm giving up, I'm letting go, I'm letting this go, because I have this other life now.
I I don't know.
My best guess.
My best guess too.
I'm always curious to hear how other people interpret these visuals because to me, the lyrics are very visual. But when I watch this, if you want to call it a music video, you can, but they call it a short film. Either way, the visuals in the short film don't line up with the visuals I had from
Right.
listening to the song. But, that's pretty typical of me with music videos. I'm kind of like, well, that's not what I thought when I heard the song. It was fine. I mean, we can kind of connect the dots a little bit. My impression was an artist, a visual artist, heard this music or was given this music and said, hey, make some visuals to go. What do you hear? What are you inspired to show, what's in your mind? And that's what this person came up with. I don't know. There were some other versions, and we mentioned the Guitar Center piano-only version, and I call it piano-only just as a reference from to contrast from the guitar-only that we're so familiar with. You said you liked that one.
I did. I actually listened to it a couple times because I listened to it the first time and to me it sounds like a completely different song if you're
Mm-hmm.
just listening to the music. But I really like it, and it might just be because that's kind of how I expect some of those Andrew ballads to be, is just the piano and him, but also the way that the keys hit in my head when I hear it. I feel like it's like raindrops or teardrops. Just it's very somber. And yeah, I really liked it. I might like it better than the guitar version.
I loved hearing that because, like a lot of this stuff, it's not until I start researching and I come across it. So this video may have been recorded 8 or 9 years ago, I think, but I didn't hear it until now.
Yeah.
I've lived with this acoustic guitar version that I love for so long that I got so used to it, and it does seem to fit for me with Jack's Mannequin, despite the fact that there's no piano. But then you show me this piano only version of it, and it's like, wow, like it takes it to a whole nother level. Which coincidentally, I felt the same way. We referenced a song called "Wait" earlier by Something Corporate,
Yeah.
and when they re-released that as a full band version with the piano front and center, that song moves me so much. I mean, it like I said, it's top tier. Something Corporate, Andrew McMahon. type thing for me. That piano elevated that song as well. I think this does something similar for me. It's like the way, I don't want to say it was meant to be because it wasn't. Obviously, Andrew was intentional with having it be guitar. He must have chosen that. It feels right with Andrew at a piano. I'll just put it that
Right.
way. Yeah, it just feels
Definitely.
right. And then the field recording is the other one. I'll include both of these in the show notes. But the field recording, it's called Field Recording Ventura, and I assume it's the Ventura Theater because there's a video out online, and then this is also on Spotify, and it's called the same thing. But the video, you can actually see they're sitting in what looks to be the upper level of a music venue. Bobby's just playing the guitar, and Andrew's just singing. And even when you listen on Spotify, you can hear people moving around in the back. There's things moving. I really think they just sat down in a theater while other things were going on, either probably before the show, probably not after, and just did this. I don't know. Did you get that impression from that video?
Yeah, it was like very just laid back, relaxed, and you could see the people down on the stage moving equipment and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. So yeah, I really liked it. I feel like it sounds very much like the recorded. It's stripped down and they called it acoustic and was like, well, kind of it sounds very similar to what's on the album. But yeah, it's beautiful.
It had been a while since I listened to that version, so I was in my car a little while before we started this recording. I was like, oh, I'm going to listen to that Ventura version one more time. And I was surprised at how different it did sound because I was kind of looking back to the video, thinking back to the video last time I watched it. I was like, okay, it kind of sounds like the regular version. The one thing I did notice now that I know that there's a female vocalist on the album track is that I noticed Bobby singing backing vocals. I noticed a guy singing backing vocals when I listened on Spotify to that version. When I could really, and I'm sure it shows that in the video, and I just don't remember. But
Hmm.
I'm unclear of why they released that as like a separate thing. Again, it's on Spotify as if it's a single, but the song was definitely not a single. But it's just like an alternate version of one song on People and Things, and they put it on Spotify for some reason. I don't know why, but it's cool though. Did this song hold a special meaning for you, like a special place in your heart before the idea of your novel even came about? Was this song special to you?
It didn't mean the same to me then as it does now. I think it has
Okay.
more a different meaning or feeling to me now
Oh, certainly.
than it did previously.
So now I bet it's hard for you to think about this song without thinking about your characters and their story.
Yeah, it's kind of weird how the characters have seemed to just like set up in my head and I think about them and like what would they do and how would they feel? And that's why I love music is because it can express so much that you sometimes maybe don't know how to say. You
Mm-hmm.
use a song and
Yeah.
that's actually kind of a in the book is the two main characters they give songs back and forth to each other to
Okay.
like this is the like they don't know what to say so they give a song and that song speaks what is on my heart but I don't know how to really put into words so that's kind of one of the ways that they communicate their feelings and I feel like I do that if I listen to music and I'm mad I'll put on a mad song real loud so everybody in the house
Oh,
knows
sure.
that I'm mad. Maybe it's passive aggressive, I don't
So
know.
you're communicating it in a different way. You're not handing it to somebody, but you're like letting them know. Yeah, I think I've done that before. I'm sure I've done that before.
I don't do that a lot anymore. I'm much more mature, but
I do that more with sad music. Like, I want to match my mood. Like, some people don't like sad music because they say, well, it just makes me sad. I'm like, no, it soothes my soul because I'm sad and I can relate to it.
totally.
Yeah.
I'm totally the same way.
Well, pop punk and emo kids, that's
Yep. We got
that's
problems.
that's who we are. What are some other songs that you were able to incorporate into your story, or other artists maybe?
Yeah. So, well, Newfound Glory,
Hmm.
Eve Six, Sugar Cult, Sum 41,
Okay.
Good Charlotte, The Ataris, Simple Plan, Yellow Card, May. Have you ever heard May? Mae.
Heard of them, don't know them. Should I check them out?
Yes, I really like them.
Another artist I probably missed.
Dashboard Confessional, the starting line, and then there's a Taking Back Sunday song that I got in there for some angry moment.
Very cool. Wow, that sounds like my kind of playlist there.
Yes.
So were you able to list it somehow, like list the song or the lyrics or anything like that in the book, or is it just kind of referred to so you kind of gotta think about it to know what you're referring to?
So at the beginning of the book, I do have the playlist with the specific songs. So either
Hmm.
it's a song that the two main characters have passed back and forth to each other, or if they make a reference to a band, I've picked a song and I put that in the playlist. And I created a playlist on Spotify. So it lives on Spotify. It's printed in the book, but in terms of like lyrics or anything, there's no lyrics inside the book. It's just the song titles.
Is that a Spotify playlist that's available publicly? Like, can I share that out or?
Yeah, it's a public playlist, so I could get you that link.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd like to share that out. I'll share that out on Instagram.
Cool.
I'd like to listen to it. I'm sure there's other people listening that would like to listen to it as well.
Great. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you everyone who continues to listen to the show, and I want to thank Hazel for joining me here. So, thank you so much, Hazel. I want you to know that I wish the best for you in your book. So your book, we're recording this in early October. The book comes out on October
11th.
11th. So it's released on October 11th.
Part one of the Fire Island series.
Saltaire is part one of the Fire Island series.
Yes.
You can order it at that link is in the show notes for you if you want to order it. So I think my wife will be getting a copy. So it sounds right up her alley for sure. And then we'll look forward to the sequel. Is there a timeline for the sequel, or is it just kind of like you're going to see how this goes first and then that'll be off in the distance yet?
Yeah, the goal is for the sequel to come out in February. So if everything keeps progressing,
Oh, February, like 4 months from now.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that's really soon.
just
Okay.
in a couple months.
So readers won't have to wait too long then.
That's my goal. That's what I'm hoping for.
Cool. Well, I've seen a lot of buzz about it on Instagram. So you have an Instagram, Hazel Jacks, right?
Yep, I have an Instagram. I have Facebook. I'm not really on that one quite as much. If you want to connect, if you read the book and you love it, let me know what you think. And it's also going to be it's available through Amazon on Kindle Unlimited, and paperback as well. I just wanted to thank you, Steve, for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for being on. I love talking through music with other Andrew fans, and it's always good to look at it also from another angle. So I really thought this was an interesting way to look at Restless Dream also through the lens of some characters in your story.
Awesome. Thank you.
So as always, feel free to DM me on Instagram or email somethinginthewilderness@gmail.com. We can chat about all things Andrew, and if you want to follow in Hazel's footsteps, I'm always looking for more guests on the show. And Hazel, I'm hoping that maybe we can do this again when the sequel comes out and maybe talk about another song or
Yeah,
something related to what's in the sequel. So
I'd love that. That sounds good.
very good. It's funny how the words we never say can turn into the only thoughts we know.